Let's cultivate our motivation. And realizing that our life is precious, but that death can stop it at any time. And just for a moment imagine, if your life ended tonight, how would you feel? Is there any clinging? Are there some regrets? Are there apologies to be made that haven't been made? Or forgiveness that hasn't been extended? Are you ready to let go of everything you consider I and mine and go into a new rebirth where everything is totally unknown? So if we have some concerns about how we're going to die, then let's use that to motivate us to practice while we're alive. Because by practicing well now, reducing our clinging, hatred, ignorance now, then at the time of death, those regrets and that insecurity and fear won't be there. And so one of the chief ways the chief way of eliminating the fear is to realize emptiness. And the best way to make meaning of that realization is to have the bodhicitta that wants to attain full enlightenment for the benefit of all beings. Let's generate that aspiration now. And see the teachings that we're about to listen to as one step going in that direction. So when you think of letting go of everything you consider I and mine, suddenly, right now, like that, what do you feel like? You think it's going to be easy to change gears? Yeah, it's scary, isn't it? Yeah, because we've put all our eggs in the basket of an inherently existent I and mine, and we're holding on to it as inherent existent, and when it suddenly disintegrates, it's as if we've lost everything that we're familiar with. Yeah. So Milarepa said that he used the fear of death to conquer the fear of death. Yeah. So when we look like this and it's scary, use that fear to motivate us to practice. And through practicing and gaining realizations, then the fear of death is conquered. But I do this many times, in my practice, and just, okay, can I change gears like that? sometimes I fool myself into thinking, oh yeah, okay, I'll just relax into dying. And then I say, and then? What's your next life going to be like? How do you feel about going into a whole new hallucination where you have no idea who the main characters are and what your role is and what's going on around you? Yeah. And so you can see why, you know, infants and animals are, you know, quite frightened, not understanding what's going on around them. Mm-hmm. So let's use this to really motivate us to practice. Now, I had written myself a note from last week that we still need to talk about getting taken advantage of, people taking advantage of us. Now, in light of this little meditation we did on death, does people taking advantage of you seem like a big deal? It doesn't at all, does it? It seems so insignificant. Like, why in the world would I make such a big deal about people taking advantage of me? It's so meaningless. When I die, I'm not going to be thinking about that. I'm not going to care about it. Yeah. So you see, when you have some understanding of death, then these kinds of things seem like minuscule. But when we're in our ordinary state of mind, that feels like we're quite permanent. The idea of people taking advantage of us really riles us, doesn't it? You know, it's like, I don't want anybody taking advantage of me. No way, this is important, and nobody's going to take advantage of me. And it's so interesting how, in the matter of a couple of minutes, by changing what the mind's focusing on, that fades away and is gone, isn't it? But when we don't have that memory of death, boy, is that important. Right? So when you look at the idea of people taking advantage of you and how much we dislike it, you know, what have you found in doing your research in your own mind, in your own practice, is going on behind that kind of thought? How does it arise? Yeah.
Well, I'm usually very strong self-centered thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of times I may not have been taking care of myself very well, and then I project all of that onto another, that they are or they're going to take advantage of me. So I put all of that on another instead of turning it to me about what I need to do so that I can feel balanced.
Okay, so you're saying at that time there's very strong self-centeredness. You're not taking care of yourself, so you've gotten out of balance. But not seeing that that part is your responsibility, you project it onto somebody else, that they're going to take advantage of me. When really what you need to do is come back and rebalance yourself, recenter yourself. And what have other people found out? Yeah.
Well, I think it's the case sometimes of not setting clear boundaries.
Yeah, I'm thinking, why don't people come up here, and then I won't have to repeat it each time. You gotta sit in front.
Okay. So when I thought about this week, I was thinking about times where it's happened to me, and I realized that I didn't set clear boundaries, and so then it's easy to fall into this sort of victim mentality. But it's really my responsibility to set these boundaries. And then sometimes it can just be a miscommunication too, where if it's group work, I'm assuming those people are doing it, and they're assuming that I'm doing it, and we're all pointing the finger at each other, which is very silly.
Well, similar to Dallas, what I became aware of, I didn't use the words people taking advantage of me as much as I did about being afraid that people would take more than I could give. That's sort of the energy it has in me, or sometimes words like feeling sucked dry, really strong like that. And that is really clearly being afraid to say no, or being afraid to say that's enough, out of not wanting people to not like me if I don't give them what they want. So it was all tied up for me in wanting to be liked and pleasing people, and being afraid to set my own boundaries, to take care of myself, out of fear of being rejected or something painful like that.
For me, the sense is that I create more fear about what might happen than anything that might really come to pass. So it's more that sense of I misapprehend the intention of other people, and it's my own fear, kind of that self-centered part, that kind of makes it out to be much bigger than it ever really turns out to be.
I'm going to take advantage of you. Okay. So there seems to be some consensus here about when we are concerned that other people are going to take advantage of us, that there's a very strong self-centered element here, that the I feels threatened in some way, that people are going to want more than we can give, they're going to want more than we want to give, so our stinginess is there, but then we feel guilty because we should be more generous, but we don't want to be, or maybe we can't be, so then we feel guilty again, and then we worry about if they're going to like us or they're not going to like us, and what our reputation is going to be. And we just spin at the whole time being angry at the other person because it's their fault. And what I've found, this comes up in me when my own mind isn't very clear about my motivation for giving. Yeah, when my motivation for giving is clear, then, this thing of being taken advantage of doesn't enter into the picture. But when my motivation isn't very clear, and I'm thinking about what they think of me, or what I think of me, if I think I'm being stingy because they want more and I don't want to give it, yeah, so that's my own guilty mind, So if I'm very concerned with all of that, then, there's very little giving to start with, is there? Yeah, because the motivation is so totally unclear. Mm-hmm. And very strong self-centeredness. Mm-hmm. So some people use the language of setting boundaries. That's, a couple of you did that. That's language that, I don't know, I have some difficulty with that language. It's not very appealing to me, because I get the image of, there's the boundary, and don't you dare put your little finger beyond that, because I've established it, and it's in concrete, and you can't put your little finger beyond it, because then I'm going to beat you. Yeah, and so it seems to me, I don't know, it doesn't have a good feeling in my own heart when I set boundaries, because it seems to me I'm setting boundaries so the other person doesn't impinge. So I'm still in some way thinking it's the other person's fault, and I'm setting a boundary so that they can't do naughty things to me. Whereas, so that feels, for me, that language, the conception I get feels very uncomfortable. What I prefer more is when I'm clear then I am aware of what's happening in the situation, what my motive is, what my intention is. And when I'm clear, then, somehow there's no need to set boundaries against the other person, because it's really not the other person's problem, it's my problem. Yeah, it's my lack of unclarity that I feel I have to say, you can't go beyond this. But when I'm clear, then even if they go beyond that, I don't get confused, I don't get angry, I just understand what's happening, and I can respond in a way that's going to function well. Does that make some sense? Yeah? Because it seems to me if I set a boundary, then I have to enforce it. Yeah? And then I have to enforce it with the other person, and then that gets really sticky. I'm putting myself in a predicament if I set a boundary and then I have to enforce it against the other person. Whereas if I have clarity and I know what I can do and what I can't, what I'm willing to do and what I'm not, what is appropriate for me to do and what isn't appropriate for me to do, when I have clarity about that, then the other person can do this, that, the other thing, and I don't get flustered and knocked off of balance. Yeah, because I just know how to respond to that. Did you have something?
I just have a sense for all this. That you're giving your power away.
What is giving your power away?
When I have a feeling of being taken advantage of, I'm not clear, giving away the power of having a clear mind and all of the things that would entail, and I put the responsibility and giving power.
Okay, so you're saying, it's quite good, that when you feel like somebody's taking advantage of you, what you've essentially done is given away your own power and adopted a victim mentality. Yeah, and given the other person the power, so that, and it's in fact your own unclarity. Yeah. Yeah. So I was reading something last week about this triangle of victim, persecutor, and rescuer. Yeah, and I was thinking that about this in terms of getting taken advantage of. And so when I feel somebody's taking advantage of me, then I put myself in the victim mentality, in the victim role, and I put them in the perpetrator role, or the persecutor role. Yeah. And then I want somebody to come and rescue me from the other person taking advantage of me. Yeah. And so I put myself, like you said, in a powerless position. And then this thing of, I'm going to set boundaries, you can't do this. Then I'm switching from the victim role, is now I'm going to become the perpetrator, and I'm going to rub it in your face. And you can't do this to me, and make you into the victim. Yeah, so none of it works very well, does it? So we can really see self-centered thought makes a mess, as usual. And I was also thinking, at this idea, somebody's taking advantage of me. Who's created that boundary after which they're asking for something becomes taking advantage? Who has defined what it's okay for them to ask for and what it's not okay for them to ask for? Me. Yeah? So I set up that, and then I have to defend it and react to it. And my dear reputation is at stake. Ay, ay, ay. Okay. Let's go back to the text. Okay, so we're at the point now that is taking adverse circumstances into the path by relying on the excellent practices of accumulation and purification. Okay? So here the root line is, the text says, the supreme method is accompanied by 4 practices. So the supreme method of bodhicitta, as a way to transform adverse circumstances into the path, is accompanied by doing 4 practices. Okay? So the 4 practices are accumulating merit, doing purification, making offerings to spirits, and making offerings to Dharma protectors. So let's go through those. Okay, so the first one is accumulation of merit, and our author here says, if you dislike suffering and wish for peace, thinking that it is easy to accumulate small, medium, and large virtues in relation to the higher and lower fields of merit, do it in the company with all sentient beings. Okay, so if you dislike suffering and want peace, okay, then think to accumulate small, medium, and large merit, okay, in relationship to the higher and lower fields of merit. The higher field of merit is our guru and the three gems, 3 jewels. The lower field of merit means sentient beings, especially those who are suffering, who are impoverished, who have been especially kind to us, and so on. It doesn't mean that those beings are higher and lower, or that the merit created with them is higher or lower. Okay? It's just talking, I guess, in terms of realization, the higher being the 3 jewels and our spiritual master, and the lower being sentient beings. So we accumulate merit in relationship to both of those groups. Yeah? So you've probably heard me say that we shouldn't divide it between, I'm going to serve my teacher and be very nice to my teacher, and then just ordinary sentient beings like, who are these guys? But rather see that taking care of sentient beings is serving our teacher. And so not to make a big difference between that. Because I remember so well living at one Dharma center, and everybody wanted to come into the house where the Lama was staying and do his dishes and vacuum and clean, but nobody wanted to do it in the rest of the center, to clean it or to do the dishes. Yeah, because there was this big difference between, being with the Lama and being with these sentient beings. Okay, and we shouldn't see it like that, because the whole the whole thing that our teachers is concentrated on or focused on is the benefit of sentient beings. So if we benefit sentient beings, we're benefiting our teacher, we're serving our teacher. Okay, the prayers of the meditator Vijujvala says, whatever is meant for my purpose, happiness or suffering, good or bad, may I accept it. Okay, so there's a little bit of explanation here. So the accumulation of merit, when doing it, we want to make offerings, prostrations, meditate on the 2 bodhicittas, the ultimate bodhicitta and conventional bodhicitta. And we also want to make request prayers to the 3 jewels, like what is I just read here from that one prayer. So the request prayer is something to the feeling of, if it's better for other sentient beings, may I overcome sickness and have a long life. But if it's better for other sentient beings, may I be sick and have a short life. Yeah. If it's beneficial for me and my self-centered mind to have a short life, may I die soon. But if it's more beneficial for me to have a long life so that I can benefit others, may that happen. Okay? And so we make these kinds of aspirations and prayers that are completely separate from what the self-centered thought wants to do. In other words, instead of looking at like what the self-centered thought wants to do and what pleases the self-centered thought and benefits the self-centered thought, We leave it completely up to what is the greatest benefit for sentient beings. Yeah. So in Lama Zopa's Prayer for a Meaningful Life that we also often do, where he says the purpose of my life isn't to be rich and famous and happy and things like that. The purpose of my life is to benefit others. Then that's what we really feel. And if it's more beneficial for sentient beings that we live, may we live. If it's more beneficial that we die, may we die. If it's more beneficial that we're sick, may we be sick. If it's more beneficial that we're well, may we be well. In other words, completely letting go of the self-centered mind that says, but I want, what about me? I don't want to suffer. Yeah, you know that mind? Okay? And so I find this way of making aspirations, when my mind's getting very, very tight about something, then to just drop it and say, if it's more beneficial for sentient beings, may this happen. If it's more beneficial, may that happen. And in that way, I let go of my opinions. I let go of my favoritism for one result over another result. And I just accept the situation. Okay? Do you think you can do that ever? When you're sick, to say, if it's more beneficial for sentient beings, may I be sick? When you have a headache, can you say, if it's more beneficial for sentient beings, may I have this headache and be happy about it? And if it's more beneficial for sentient beings, may I not have this headache and also be okay? Can we really say that? Forget living and dying. Let's just talk about having a headache, Or let's talk about some small thing like getting our way about some small thing that we're always, advocating for. And just say, well, if it's better for me to get my way on this, good. If it's better for sentient beings for me not to get my way, that's good also. If it's good for me to sit in this traffic jam, may it be. If it's not good, may that also be. And just be really okay with that. Okay? Homework this week. Let's try that. Okay? So just try it. Instead of going, no, I don't want to think like that, it's too scary. Just try it. Let's just try it this week. If it's better for sentient beings, can I lose the fight? If it's better for sentient beings, can I take out the garbage? Yeah? Yeah, it's true that anything that gets us to acceptance, immediately we feel good, don't we? But it's sometimes very hard to get to acceptance of the situation. We just fight it. We fight reality. Fighting reality is really a losing situation, isn't it? Yeah? Because what is. We're not going to change it. Yeah, we can change the future, but what is. Okay, so let's practice this coming week, just making this kind of prayer. Then the second of the 4 preparations, okay, is to purify. And so here we want to, our author says, for the purification of negativities, all the misdeeds you have committed or caused to be committed over beginningless time due to the disturbing emotions must be confessed repeatedly through the 4 powers. Okay? So, all the misdeeds that we've done ourselves, or that we've encouraged other people to do, or caused them to do, or rejoiced at their doing. Yeah, we don't even need to have done them ourselves. We rejoiced at it. or we told somebody else to do the dirty work for us. Okay, all these things that we've done since beginningless time, we need to purify. And how do we purify them? By means of the four opponent powers. Okay, so just to review, the four opponent powers are, first of all, regretting the negative action, which is different than feeling guilty about it. Okay, then second, I call it restoring the relationship. It's technically called the power of reliance, because you're relying on whoever it was you committed the negativity in relationship to. So that means taking refuge in the holy beings instead of them being the objects that we've harmed, and having love, compassion, and bodhicitta towards sentient beings instead of leaving them as the objects that we've harmed. So internally we've restored a good relationship with them. And then third is making a determination not to do the action again. Okay? And then fourth is to do some kind of remedial behavior. Yeah, to get our tush off the kush. And do something. Or the tush could be on the kush, because sometimes the remedial behavior is doing vajrasattva, okay, or reciting sutras, reciting the names of the Buddhas, meditating on bodhicitta, all these kinds of things. Okay, but to actively do the four opponent powers to purify our negativities. And so I think when we purify, that's also psychologically very healthy, because to purify, we have to be very honest with ourselves and really admit our own faults. And when we admit our own faults, then we have so much more energy, because we're not wasting our energy in just justifying and denying and rationalizing and suppressing and repressing and blaming and everything else. And we can just say, I made this mistake and I regret it, and I'm going to purify. And when we can do that in a really honest way, then our heart is very, very clear. Whereas when we're always, I'm a victim and I've got to find somebody to blame, and I've got to explain myself again and again why what I did was really okay and it was really right, and all that stuff just takes so much energy. It's just much easier to say, I made a mistake. And boy, I wasn't thinking very clearly, and I'm going to be more careful in the future. Yeah? Do you find that that's easier for you than shoving everything under the table? And then watching your table get higher and higher and higher, because you keep putting so much stuff under it that finally you can't look out over it. Okay, then the third preparation, is offering ritual cakes or tormas to or making, here it just says making offerings to evil spirits. Okay, as explained earlier, in the context of thinking about the kindness of hostile forces, acquaint yourself with love, compassion, and patience specifically towards them. Okay, so before we were talking about the kindness of people who have harmed us and how they help us to purify negativities, how they help us to find resources within ourselves that we never would have discovered, how they help us grow and learn to handle situations that we've never handled before and that we would like to run away from. Okay, so these people really do help us to grow in a very special way that our friends can't help us. And so to see that kindness and to make offerings. So here it's talking a lot about evil spirits, because in Tibetan society, the Tibetans, the whole way of thinking there, rocks and stones and trees, all these things had spirits in them, and there were many, many different kind of spirits all over the place that did things. In our culture, we don't think so much along that direction, and we might think of bad energy, but we don't necessarily think so much of spirits harming us. So in the way I think of it, is this one doesn't have to relate specifically to evil spirits. What about people who harm us? Why are we so focused on spirits that we can't see, being afraid of them harming us, but people who we can see also harm us? And those are the ones that we often get the angriest at. Okay? And so to learn to make offerings to those people who harm us. Okay. Which is the last thing we want to do, because it feels like we're giving in and capitulating and setting the stage for them to take advantage of us. Okay? But actually, if we make offering with a good motivation, this is what I mean by our own mind being clear. If we offer and our own mind is clear and we're really being genuine about wanting them to be happy, then it can actually clear the air. When we make an offering, but our motivation is to placate them or to manipulate them, then they sense it, and it often becomes even more sticky. Okay? So, just to tell you some stories regarding this, I was once working on a project over a period of time with another nun, and we had our moments, and and she had her moments with other people too. And as it happened, in the way we were ordained in our ordination order, we sat next to each other. So everywhere I went, there she was. There was no way I could ignore her. And so I could either sit there and be very angry, or what I decided to do, one time somebody gave me a chocolate bar, is I gave her the chocolate bar. And I think that she was so surprised at me giving her the chocolate bar that it just kind of disarmed her. And it really, changed our relationship in a way. Okay? I also read a story about some other people who, their neighbor was an old man who was a Holocaust survivor, and their car had been dented, and they could see, or it had been scratched, and they could see that the color that had scratched it was the color of this man's car, so that he did it. But he, when they went to say, hey, you scratched my car, he got very upset, and, no, I didn't, and why are you people bothering me, and blah, 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 So they just went and fixed their car and, just swallowed it at that point. And then a few weeks later, the car was dented or scratched again with the same color, They could see it was the same car that had done it. So then they sat down and they thought, okay, what would Lama Zopa do? Yeah, in this kind of situation, what would Rinpoche do? And they said, Rinpoche would give the guy a present. So this guy played golf. They went out and they got him some golf balls and wrapped it up in a nice package, went over, rang the doorbell. He came to the door and saw them. Hello? And they just said, we want to give you a present, and handed it to him. He said, bye, and slammed the door. Okay, and they went back, and they just, we did what we could. And after a few days, the old man comes to their house and rings the bell and says, thank you very much, that was very kind of you. Mm-hmm. Yeah? So it completely dissolved all that tension they were feeling. Yeah? So in many ways, if we really sincerely care about somebody and we make them an offering, then they sense that, and it really does improve the relationship. But like I said, if we're just doing it to get them off our back and to manipulate them or placate them, they sense that as well, and the hostility will continue. Okay. Okay. So what this thing is also saying is when we receive harm, don't get paranoid. So whether it's from spirits or from people, make offerings. Okay? So instead of, oh, somebody's harming me, we get really scared, then, chill out and make some kind of offering to them. And if you're really practicing thought training sincerely, you think, please continue to harm me and create suffering. It helps my practice. It helps me to purify. Okay? And you do this because you see that taking revenge just creates endless suffering. Doesn't it? Somebody harms us, we take revenge and harm them, then they harm us back, then we harm them. This is what's going on between many ethnic groups, between many, regions, sub-countries in the world. It's just revenge and endless suffering. But if we're patient, then it gives the opportunity for the other person to also calm down. Okay? So you think to yourself, please continue to harm me and create suffering. It helps my practice. It helps me to purify. So somebody's bugging you, somebody's on your case all the time, and you just think, please continue to do this. This is very helpful to my practice. Yeah? It shows me my ego. It shows me my self-centered thought. Yeah? By accepting this suffering, it's purifying karma that could have manifest in horrendous suffering later on. So please continue to harm me. That's hard to think, isn't it? Yeah? Because we don't want even the smallest, teeny weeniest harm. And we think that if we say, please continue to harm me, the way we look at that now, it seems like we're making ourselves into a victim, doesn't it? Yeah, when we initially hear this, we misunderstand the thought training practices, and we think they're saying to become a doormat. They're saying to capitulate all the time. Yeah, Buddha's saying just give the other person what they want, let them step all over you, let them take advantage of you, because you're not supposed to be angry, and so just handle it that way. No, that is not the meaning of the thought training practice. Okay? If you give somebody something like that, if you capitulate with that kind of motivation, that's wrong. Okay? Yeah. Rather, what the thought training practice is when that feeling of ego is coming up, of, who do they think they are to treat me like this, and I'm going to win this, and they can't do this to me, and I'm going to put them in their place, and they harm me, so I'm going to harm them even more, and then they'll stop harming me. Yeah, it's to calm down that mind. Yeah, and the way we calm it down is not by giving away our power and capitulating. It's by seeing that this self-centered thought is the cause of all of our trouble, and that this person is helping us by damaging the self-centered thought. And this person is helping us by enabling us to purify our negative karma. So we really have faith in the law of cause and effect at this point. Okay? So it's very important when you do this that you really understand it correctly. Yeah? Because thought training is not mean making ourselves into a doormat. Because that doesn't help anybody. If we become a doormat and we just say, okay, harm me, beat me up, you have more power, that's cruelty to the other person because they create so much negative karma. Okay? But if we want revenge and we want to harm them, that's also cruel to them. Yeah, because that harms them. Yeah? So one way to handle it is this way of thought training. Make some sense? When I was in one of the prisons in Ohio last summer, the guys were talking to me about a bully coming and, accosting them right after they had gotten their stuff from commissary, because when you're an inmate, it's like a really big deal when you have a little bit of money to go to the commissary and get some stamps and some ramen noodles and maybe some peanut butter, and it's a big thing. And when you're coming home from commissary, your mind is already with how much you're going to enjoy all these things. And if somebody comes up and accosts you and demands them, this is a big deal. And I tried to explain to the guys, well, give the person something. They wouldn't accept it. They couldn't go there. They said, if I give him a present, he's just going to take advantage of me. He's going to accost me every week after commissary. And I tried to explain that there's giving a present when you're afraid, and there's giving a present from a feeling of genuine compassion for somebody. And that they're very, very different, and how you do it is the energy the other person's going to pick up on. Yeah. What do you think?
I don't know. I think that's I think you're quite right with that last statement. They're going to pick up on the energy of it, but it's also hard to do that in certain situations without having the energy to feel. So to be able to actually do it purely without giving that energy off, so that that person doesn't pick up on it and feel like they are actually taking advantage of you and doing what they want you to do. Angry with the person.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a good response. Because you're saying that actually it's true. If you are able to give with compassion, the other person will sense your power in giving with compassion and will respond to that. But what you're saying is, in a tense moment like that, it's very difficult for us ordinary beings to instantly transform our mind into a state that genuinely cares about the other, because usually at that moment what is so prominent in our mind is fear. Yeah, and the fear comes and we're just completely paralyzed by it. Yeah, which is exactly what the other person wanted. They feed off that fear. Yeah, but if you could get yourself to a calm place, it would probably work.
I think the better approach would be do whatever you need to do at that moment to get through the situation, and then to come back to the person on your own terms.
Okay, so you're saying what would work better for ordinary people is to do what you need to do to get through the situation, and then later come back to that person on your own terms. What do you mean by that?
Without being accosted by somebody, walking up to that same person, you coming to them and initiating a situation and just giving a gift. And then in the future, if that happens again, there will be less fear involved.
Okay. But when you say doing what you need to do to get through the situation?
Depends on how clear your mind is. If you have a clear enough mind, and giving a gift on the moment. But I think I would have to kind of stand up for myself, at least to some degree. And then try to come back and do it.
Okay. So you think, knowing yourself and your own ability, that you would stand up for yourself and say, no, I'm not going to give you anything, but then maybe come back to the person at a later time and give them a gift when your mind is calm and when you're actually feeling compassion towards them. Yeah, those situations are quite difficult, especially when we didn't have them planned in our calendar, and you were just walking down the corridor thinking of something else, and then wham, there's somebody in our face and we have to deal with it. It was very hard to switch the mind at that point. But if we can, it's something good to do.
We talked to an inmate at Monroe when I was there, and he had a situation where someone came up and accosted him, and he saw him coming toward him in an angry way, and the fellow just started pouring light from his heart to the person, and he was able to speak with that person and kind of keep his keep his compassion, but also be clear and firm that the guy was accusing him of something he didn't do. And he stayed in his truth, but he kept that visualization of the light and the guy back down.
Okay. So you're saying that you talked to one of the guys at one of the prisons you visited who related a story of seeing somebody come to him with a very hostile expression on his face. And while the other guy was approaching, he just imagined light coming from his heart, flooding the other person, and like purifying him and wishing him well. And so when the other person finally arrived there, he held his ground, and dealt with it all the time, sending him this light, but he was able to be firm and, say no. Yeah.
The fellow said that he was scared inside, he didn't know if it would work, but he thought it'd be worth a try, and then he was quite astounded
Yeah.
how well it worked.
Yeah, so he was scared at first. He didn't know if it would work, but he gave it a try, and he was astounded because it worked so well, and that the other guy actually did back off. Yeah. Okay, then the fourth one is offering ritual cakes to religious protectors and seeking their help. Okay, so this is the religious cakes are ritual cakes or religious cakes are what they call tormas. The Tibetans make these things out of barley flour and decorate them. We can actually use cookies or canned fruit or something that we consider quite delicious. Yeah, we don't have to make things in that shape like that. Okay, so it says arrange as many clean ritual cakes as you can afford, and visualizing them as the most magnificent and extensive offerings, offers them to the Dharma protectors you have invoked through the prescribed ritual. So there's different sadhanas that you do, rituals you do to invite the Dharma protectors to come, and then you make offerings to them. Okay. Now, very often, when people do this practice to protectors, what they pray to the protectors for is, may nobody harm me, may I have the wealth I need to do my Dharma practice, may people like me, may my position in the monastery be well, may my family be well. They invoke the protector, make an offering, and then ask for all these things that are actually quite worldly. Or they might ask for things also, may I have the circumstances I need to practice the Dharma and a good retreat place and, enough money to do retreat and, a teacher to teach me and so on and so forth. So sometimes people pray for those Dharma kind of circumstances as well. Here in the thought training practice, what you pray for? May I be able to see adverse circumstances as the path to enlightenment, as the holy Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the past have done. And just as the precious awakening mind, which is the core of the general body of the teachings of the great vehicle, was born in the mind streams of the holy ones of the past, may I generate, maintain, and increase it in my mind stream. And may I be granted your virtuous help so that I may be able to benefit sentient beings through my body, speech, and mind whenever I hear, see, think, or come into contact with them. Okay? So you can see that this is, here you make offerings to the protectors, and then you make... You request their blessings or their inspiration to be able to actually do the thought training practice as it's taught, okay? And to generate the bodhicitta, just as the past holy beings have done, to generate it, maintain it, and increase it in your mind stream, to be able to benefit all, sentient beings, whoever you come in contact with, whoever you see, whoever you hear or hear about, whoever you touch or think about or who thinks about you, may my mind be only filled with love and compassion for that person. That's how you pray in the thought training teachings. Okay? So usually we request not to meet with inner and outer obstacles, and if we meet with obstacles, may they not damage us, may they not affect us seriously. But here we pray in the thought training practice, may my disease continue, bless me to have more suffering and pain, bless me to transform them into the path, by transforming adversity into the path. So it's not that we're being masochistic and praying just may I suffer, because that's not very healthy, is it? Yeah. But here we're really seeing the benefit karmically that we derive from experiencing suffering, and how suffering can clear our mind of obstacles and help us have more compassion for others. Yeah, don't you feel more compassion sometimes when you're suffering? Because then you really know what it's like for somebody else. Yeah, we're not so complacent. So we're really saying, may I have the suffering so that my compassion will increase, so that my bodhicitta will increase. Okay? And if we get sick, then we pray, may my taking and giving practice, then we think, my taking and giving practice is working. Yeah, I've been taking on all these obstacles and sickness of others. Now I'm sick, now I have an obstacle, now somebody's mad at me. Yippee, my taking and giving practice has been working. I've been taking on the obstacles of others, I've been taking on all their fear of people not liking them, and now somebody doesn't like me. Good, my practice has been working. I've been taking their feeling of not being liked, now I have it, they're free from it, my practice is working. That's what we should think. Instead of, oh no, I did this practice and now I'm suffering, oh I don't want to do this practice anymore, I already have enough suffering. That's a self-centered mind thinking, isn't it? So do you see, by doing this practice of transforming adversity into the path, how strong our mind gets? Can you get a sense of how, if we really sincerely practice this, our mind gets incredibly strong? Yeah? Then we're not afraid of other things, because we know how to transform them into the path in a very sincere, genuine way. Not stuffing stuff, not neglecting stuff, but really genuinely transforming it. So then the mind becomes so courageous. Yeah, so strong. And we're not all like, timid and afraid anymore. Okay, so when we do this, then we can bear sickness, aging, and even death with happiness, because we really feel like we're doing it for others. Okay, so you want to practice all these ways in your meditation session, yeah, and then in the break time, practice them when you encounter actual situations, and in that way transform what you encounter into the path to enlightenment. It's a beautiful practice, isn't it? Yeah?
Seems like it's really important to have a really strong and clear view about multiple lives in order to really embrace this. Accepting just one life, thinking of just one life, I think it's too scary.
Yeah. Okay, so you're saying to really embrace this, having a view of multiple lives makes it much easier, because if you're just thinking of this life and wishing yourself suffering, then it's really too scary and there doesn't seem to be any purpose for it. Yeah? But if you're really thinking that you're purifying the negativity from past lives and removing the obstacles from your present and future lives, and you're really aspiring for Buddhahood in this way, then taking on the suffering of others and transforming your own suffering into the path makes more sense and becomes easier to do. Yeah.
Well, I don't quite understand the role of Dharma protectors. Why would you not make that prayer to the Buddhas or to the deities?
Okay, so what's the role of Dharma protectors, and why wouldn't you make that prayer to whatever deity you're practicing or to your teacher? You can also pray to the other deities and to your teacher. It doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's equally as valid to request blessings in that way. I think maybe they talk about Dharma protectors here to really emphasize, because people so often pray for things they want with the Dharma protectors, and it's here really emphasizing how you're changing what you want. Okay? And also seeing that what you're now wanting is really, your whole viewpoint is now protecting your mind. Yeah, the one phrase in the Dharma training was what I mentioned at the beginning: the supreme method is accompanied by the 4 practices. Or another way of saying it is, possess the 4 preparations, the highest of means. That's the phrase in the 7-point thought training that's been commented on. Okay, so we'll stop here.